Lutoto eats Pepe and nothing of value was lost. All that was shown from the scene was Pepe's scream as we cut back to the Soul King's palace where Korinji has not been able to land a single hit on Yhwach. He tries again, but just like before, his attack misses. Yhwach, Hashvalt, and Uryu continue to walk forward, but their path is blocked by Shutara and her army of Foot Clan soldier ninjas. Not being bothered by this, Yhwach walks up the stairs and eventually passes Shutara. However, her Foot Clan soldiers try to attack Yhwach with their swords, but they were unable to hit him. How? Well, it was all thanks to the ability of one Stern Reacher who has emerged from Yhwach's shadow. He is Stern Reacher W, the Wind, Nyanzel Weasel.
And for some reason he has two tongues and he talks like this. Why does he have two tongues? Now seriously, what is up with that? Is that like with Gravity being a brain?
Meanwhile, back in the Seritate, the cannon is finally ready to launch Ichigo and the others to the Soul King's palace, albeit very loudly considering that Urahara was playing some really loud music or something, I'm not sure. Urahara then starts the countdown to launch the cannon and that is where the chapter ends. The beginning scene with Pepe being eaten, good riddance. Pepe was such a letdown and he became my least favorite Stern Reacher. Plus, we already saw his ability and his full standig, so I have no qualms over him being eaten by Lil Toto, which by the way, Lil Toto, I'm starting to like her more and more. Unfortunately, we don't know what happened to Menenas. Maybe Lil Toto had no choice but to eat her. Now, I'm glad we got back to Yhwach and Korinji. Unfortunately, we didn't get to see the fight, but considering what Korinji has said, none of his attacks landed a hit on him. So, I don't know if that's fortunate or unfortunate that we didn't see the fight. But I do know one thing that's unfortunate, not seeing Korinji's Kinpika ability. But maybe we'll see what his Shikai can do, or maybe his Bankai in a later chapter. Now with Shutara, it seems that she knew Yhwach back in the past. Maybe previously they fought each other during the last Shinigami and Quincy battle. As for her subordinates, they don't look anything special, honestly. They kind of remind me of the Foot Clan from Ninja Turtles. Or maybe they're supposed to be like a special kind of ninja squad, like from Squad 2 or something. But I am curious as to see what Shutara can do, considering that she's the seamstress that created the Shinigami outfits, plus her palace was skipped. Now the new Stern Reacher W, the Wind, Nyanzo Weasel. He's okay. His ability is interesting, but the only thing that's special about him is the fact that he has two tongues. But seriously though, what is up with that? Why does he have two tongues? Also, we kind of got a gist of what he can do. He can wind the attacks into different directions so that they wouldn't hit Yhwach. Is there more to this wind ability? Possibly. Although I was kind of hoping it was Yhwach's ability and not Nyanzel, because that would have been pretty cool. Now the ending with Ichigo and the others, finally they're going to the Soul King's palace. It's about goddamn time. But the question is, who are they gonna fight? Or better yet, what are they gonna do once they get there? I mean, Ichigo, obviously he's gonna fight against Yhwach, but what about everyone else? Well, considering that there are more Stern Reachers that Yhwach have brought along, maybe each character will fight a different Stern Reacher, or some of the weaker characters will face off against Yhwach's fodder Quincy soldiers. So overall, I thought this chapter was pretty decent. Before the cannon was launched, the countdown was interrupted by Ganju, who decides to tag along with Ichigo, Chad, Orihime, and Yoruichi to the Soul King's palace because he has the map to the place. Ichigo tells him that this journey is going to be even tougher, but Ganju tells him that he's aware of that and he's still going to tag along with them anyway. The countdown restarts and the cannon is finally launched towards the Soul King's palace. All the while, Orihime reminisces the time they were all together like this, back when they went to Soul Society to save Rukia. She wonders if Uryu will ever come back to them, to which Ichigo tells her that he will because he's gonna beat Yhwach and then he'll beat Uryu and drag his ass back. Meanwhile, back at the palace, Shutara's Foot Clan ninja soldiers were unable to hit Nyanzel, who by the way, his Stern Reacher outfit consists of a poncho and nothing else. He tells them that all the enemies he's seen have all twisted, turned, and avoided him right before his very eyes. He was also the one responsible for protecting Yhwach, Hashvalt, and Uryu from Korinji's White Water and attacks. Now that Shutara Shitara has a better understanding on Nyanzel's ability, she figured if Nyanzel can see his opponents, then the attacks will not be diverted. Pieces of camouflaged cloth were raised to reveal more of her ninja soldiers as they try to attack Nyanzel from behind. Unfortunately, just like before, Nyanzel bends their blades. He tells Shitara that he doesn't have to literally see his enemy. He can still see the enemy with his intuition, and no matter where nor how the attack comes at him, it'll turn from his entire body, as he uses his wind ability to redirect the swords back to the ninja soldiers, and he cuts them in half somehow. But it turns out that Shitara was not referring to her ninja soldiers as the unseen attack. They were used as a distraction for Nyanzel so that Shitara can retailor his outfit with her very own fabric, sewing the Squad Zero emblem onto his poncho. Nyanzel tries to remove his outfit, but Shitara tells him not to take it off until he dies. He gets stabbed multiple times with spikes coming from his outfit, and that's where the chapter ends. Okay, am I the only one that thought that the beginning of the chapter was longer than it needed to be? Maybe it's because of that comedy routine between Ichigo and Ganju at the beginning of their conversation? I don't know. Speaking of Ganju, as much as it was cool seeing him again after so long, I just don't know what he's going to contribute when they get to the Soul King's palace and when they have to eventually fight against Yhwach and his subordinates. Maybe aside from that map he has, I can assume that he must have gotten stronger considering this is his second appearance ever since the time skip. I'm assuming that Kubo is including Ganju in this so that we can get a sense of nostalgia from the Soul Society arc. By the way, in his first appearance, he was shown with Tsukishima, Kiriko, and Ginjo, the Fullbringers. Where the hell are they? In fact, what the hell have they been doing ever since the Quincy's invaded? Furthermore, I cannot be the only one that's thinking that this current arc is starting to become more and more like the Sasuke retrieval arc. Now, with the fight between Nyanzel and Shitara, I'm actually glad that Shitara won and showed what she is capable of. Although it hasn't been really explained, I can assume that sewing her fabric into Nyanzel's outfit caused the spikes to emerge from his outfit and stab him. As for Nyanzel, I didn't mind his defeat considering that we already saw his ability. I know some people might be bummed on not seeing his Volstandig, but we've seen several Stern Reachers who were defeated without activating their Volstandigs. So personally, I'm okay with Nyanzel's defeat as long as we got to know his ability and what his letter means. Also, since he didn't stick around long enough, I could possibly care less about the guy. Plus, he was a freaking dumbass for revealing his ability to Shitara. If he just kept his mouth shut, then Shitara wouldn't have been able to figure out a way to defeat him. Seriously, when are characters gonna learn not to reveal their abilities to their opponents so they won't allow their opponents to figure out a way to defeat them? Come to think of it, why the hell did Nyanzel reveal himself? He could have just stayed hidden protecting Yhwach, Haschfeld, and Uryu until he got to the Soul King's palace. Still, I wish we knew what the hell was up with those two tongues. And I thought the chapter was okay. Shitara apologizes for her bad habit of forgetting to remove the needles after tailoring, but Nyanzel doesn't seem to hear her considering, well, he's dead and all. Plus, his body disappears into the shadow. At least I think he did, considering what was shown in that panel. But who cares? Nyanzel's dead, he's gone, and we're never going to see him ever again. I think. So, with Nyanzel taken care of, it seems that their blades will now be able to reach Yhwach. However, the Quincy King has a backup plan. He summons his soldats, his Quincy soldiers from his shadow to deal with the Soul King soldiers. Then he summons his elite guard to deal with Squad Zero. They are Stern Reacher M the Miracle, Gerard Valkyrie aka Thor, Stern Reacher X the X-Axis, Lily Barrow aka the wannabe Tosin, a Jawa from Star Wars as Stern Reacher C the Compulsory, Pranita Parkin Gaz, I really have no idea how to say the last name, and finally Stern Reacher D, the death-dealing Askin Naklevar. Apparently Askin was promoted into the elite guard, saying that he has to bring his A-game, to which Gerard agrees, saying that if he becomes dead weight, he'll personally cut him loose. He rushes towards Shitara, who pulls out a sewing needle, but it gets cut down. No surprise there, it's a fucking sewing needle. So Shitara calls out to her Shield of the Soul King to stop them in their tracks, which turns out to be this huge ninja soldier guy. Lily doesn't care about the size of the soldier as Pernita pulls her hand out of her cloak and what looks like her inhaling contorts the soldier's body. Lily removes his cloak, revealing a huge rifle as he tells Shitara that she's too slow to comprehend that the royal palace had already fallen the moment His Highness set foot in it. He aims his rifle and the chapter ends with Shitara getting shot in the head. Okay, when I read that chapter, I knew Shitara wasn't dead because Kubo pulls this off many times in his chapters. A cliffhanger ending showing a character suffering a fatal injury that may or may not kill said character. Usually how it goes is that in the next chapter the character is dead, the character would seem to be dead but will eventually reappear later on, or it turns out that the character is not really dead and somehow survives. In this case, I'm going for option 3 because it was only recently that we got to see what Shitara can do, and if this was all that she could do and dies like this, it's very disappointing, especially from someone from Squad Zero. Now, what I liked about this chapter was seeing the other Stern Reachers. I'm hoping I'm gonna like Gerard Valkyrie because the dude looks like freaking Thor. His letter M, meaning the miracle, obviously means that his ability allows him to perform miracles, or anything that looks miraculous. Lily Barrow's design looks pretty neat, especially like that X scar that he's got on his left eye, although I can't tell if he's wearing a fur-lined hat or that's actually his hair shaped like a hat. Also, he's apparently the second Stern Reacher to have a firearm. Now, I was confused at first why his letter means the X-axis, although on Manga Panda, it was mistranslated as the Exorcist, which is completely stupid. I'm guessing he's called the X-axis because his shots never missed. They all hit his target or something. I don't know. Pernita is a bit of a mystery. We don't know if this Stern Reacher is male or female. For all we know, this person might be just like BG9 or something. I hope we get to see what she actually looks like. I'm assuming it's a she, considering her first name is Pernita. As for what she did to the giant ninja soldier, well, since she's Stern Reacher C, the compulsory, after a quick look at the dictionary, compulsory means required by law or a rule. So maybe her ability is to make up mandatory rules or laws that have to be followed. So maybe she muttered under her breath a rule to contort the giant ninja soldier's body or something. And then we have Askin. Now this might explain why he was being indecisive on whether he should go or not. He was obviously referring to joining Yhwach up to the Soul King's palace. And I'm also going to assume that he was promoted recently, not sure when, but definitely recently. Now, we knew that his letter is D, but there were theories that the D meant the dimensions, but it turns out it's the death dealing. What is the death dealing? Oh, I'm assuming he deals death or something. At least that's what I assumed when I read this chapter. But I thought it was cool seeing Askin again, and hopefully we'll get to see what he can do. So, overall, I thought this chapter was okay. Shitara's body falls, creating a big pool of blood. You know, that's a lot of blood for someone who got shot in the head, I'm just saying. However, Gerard scolds at Lily, telling him to clean up the mess that happens to be right along Yhwach's path. He asks for Pernita to give him a hand, as she twists and rolls Shitara's body into a tiny ball. Lily takes aim and shoots down the remaining platforms, destroying the other palaces, and bows down to Yhwach, giving him the okay to keep on going. However, it turns out this was all a trap orchestrated by Squad Zero, as curtains fly back, revealing that their surrounding area and the royal palace was all a fake, and that Shitara was really alive. Shitara tells them the actual location of the royal palace, as a seal with the kanji conceal appears right in front of the real Soul Palace, which was created by Ichibei. Ichibei assumed that since someone already revealed the hidden location, means that the prison is good to go. Lily tries to shoot the real Soul King's palace, but a tree trunk blocks him. This was all thanks to Hikefune, who has prepared an enormous cage made out of trees. Lily tries to shoot between the trees, but branches shoot out, blocking the bullets. Hikefune tells them that the tree she used to create the cage was made from her Ryatsu. She deduces that Lily's bullets were made out of an extremely high concentration of reishi souls, meaning that the tree can consume the bullets and will become stronger and grow faster. Therefore, there's no escaping this cage of life. Nimaiya then enters the cage carrying a giant tank of liquid with a single zanpakuto, does his usual little greeting, and the chapter ends with him challenging the elite guards, saying that the Battle of Squad Zero officially starts now. Now, this was a good chapter. I really liked the plan that Squad Zero orchestrated to capture Yhwach and his Quincy guards. I'm also kind of relieved that Shutara didn't die because, as I said before, if Shutara were to die like that, I would have been incredibly disappointed. However, I don't understand why Shutara had to tell them the actual location of the Soul King's palace. I mean, couldn't the Soul King's palace stay hidden until they dealt with Yhwach and the rest of the Quincy's? Anyway, I'm looking forward to seeing what Nimaiya can do. And this Zanpakuto he has must be something very special. Is it his own Zanpakuto? I don't know. Although, I wasn't expecting Nimaiya to challenge all the Quincy's in the cage. I was kind of expecting some one-on-one fights or at least a team battle or something. But let's just hope that this fight isn't going to be one-sided. After challenging to take on the elite guard, Nimaiya's blade starts to shake. Nimaiya, noticing this, assumes that the forte was unstable because it's been a while since the blade was last drawn. Gerard is the first to attack as he swings his sword, but Nimaiya dodges as Gerard's attack barely cuts the trees. Now it's Nimaiya's turn to attack as his head is close to Gerard's chest and Gerard goes down just like that. Well, that was quick. Everyone looks surprised, Askin assuming this was some sort of joke, as a cut opens on Gerard's body and his blood starts to gush out like a fountain. Nimaiya tells them that his sword is one swing, one kill. However, Lily assumes this was an elaborate trick. Judging from the blade being flawed and having to be submerged in a jelly-like substance, there was no way he could have one-shotted Gerard with a sword like that. He shoots Nimaiya, but he was able to split the bullet in half, each piece hitting the tree, getting absorbed, by using a simple stance. Lily shoots at Nimaiya multiple times, but he was able to block the bullets, splitting them in half with a couple swings from his sword. He gets close to Lily, slicing his gun in half, along with his body. Blood gushes from his wound, and another one is down. Next is Pernita, who was about to say something as her body goes through a transformation, I'm assuming, but Nimaiya is too quick for her as he threw his blade right through Pernita's face, pulls it out, and swings at Askin's throat. It seems he was able to keep up with the speed of Nimaiya's strikes and tried to get behind him, but he ended up exposing himself. Askin tries to say something, but Nimaiya slices his throat yet again. The Zanpakuto Nimaiya was using was called Sayabuse and was a failed creation. The blade was way too sleek and way too sharp that the blade would not chip and not a single drop of blood would linger. A sheath for a blade like that was impossible to craft, which is why it was kept in that big tank of liquid. He was grateful that the Quincy's tried to get to the Soul King's palace because Sayabuse was finally given a chance to shine. The next person that Nimaiya was going to fight was going to be Yhwach, but he sent something behind him. As it turns out, Askin is still alive. He says the reason Yhwach took him in was because he just wouldn't die. It's an ability that he absolutely hates because he always feels like he's knocking on heaven's door. And the chapter ends with Askin licking his blood. Okay, I kind of got mixed feelings with this chapter. I mean, it wasn't bad, it was kind of good, especially when Nimaiya took down 3 of the elite guards. He kicked ass in this chapter, and I'm starting to like him even more. And he was using a failed Zanpakuto. But I really didn't want this to be a one-sided battle. I know this chapter was meant to make Nimaiya look good, but this also made the elite guards look bad. I assumed that they were supposed to be at least on par with Squad Zero. I mean, why else did Yhwach chose them to join with him, Uryu, and Hashfeld up to the Soul King's palace in the first place? I didn't mind Lily being taken down, and I'm glad that Askin is still sticking around, but Gerard and Pernita got taken down, and we don't know what their abilities are. What is the miracle? What is the compulsory? Hell, we don't even know what Pernita actually looks like. Well, at least Askin is alive, and we'll get to see what the death dealing can do. After a page of explaining what a lethal dose is and the various different quantities of lethal doses, Askin tells Nimaiya about his death-dealing ability. He can create a perfect lethal dose of any specified substance and can control the amount required. At first, Nimaiya doesn't understand it, but Askin tells him it's okay because he was just as confused as he was at the start, but if there's one thing that they both understand is that Nimaiya's death is imminent. He licks the blood off his hand and Nimaiya falls to his knees. veins. Apparently, Askin lowered the lethal dose tolerance towards the blood in his system, causing the blood to flow and pulsate through Nimaiya's body longer, bringing him closer and closer to his death. Askin understands to what it feels like to be at the mercy of death as he gathers more blood in his hand and drinks it. With Nimaiya down, Askin tells him that he was underestimated because of his appearance, which used to bother him in the past, but not anymore because he considers it a strength of his as he pulls out his arrow from his bracelet. But Nimaiya is not completely down as he thanks Askin for the explanation as he cuts himself on the neck, disappearing and then reappears right behind Askin trying to attack him. But Askin dodges and his cloak gets sliced. The reason why Nimaiya cut himself was to drain the lethal blood in his body, lowering the lethal dose. However, it's not that simple. Askin calculates that Nimaiya has 4 liters of blood in his body. If he loses half of that amount, he'll die from blood loss. Also, the lethal dose of his blood right now is 1.6 liters. So, unless Nimaiya drains his blood to the point he dies of blood loss, he's going to be killed by the blood running through his own veins. But that's okay because Nimaiya calls Kurenji as he unleashes a tidal wave of water. However, this water is different from the previous one he unleashed because it was red. The previous wave of water was white water that can squeeze out blood and Ryatsu. However, this red water can replenish and replace any blood that's been lost. With new blood in his body, Nimaiya slices Askin. Askin admits that he was the one doing the underestimating and tells Nimaiya that he is totally lethal. With the last member of the Elite Guard defeated, Nimaiya focuses his attention to Yhwach as it seems that he is getting ready to fight, and that is where the chapter ends. Oh my god, where do I even begin with this chapter? Okay, let's go to the positives. Nimaiya once again was freaking badass. I'm so glad that Kurenji is doing something instead of standing around and watching. Also, the ending of the chapter holds some promise on what's to come because Yhwach is finally going to participate in a fight and I can't wait to see what he can do. Now to the negatives. While Askin's fight did last longer than the rest of the Elite Guards and his death dealing ability is interesting, but the D shouldn't stand for death dealing. It should stand for dumbass because once again we get another character explaining his ability to his opponent and it leads to his downfall. Seriously, why couldn't Askin just shut up? I mean, not only did he explain his ability to Nimaiya, but he also gave him time to figure out how to overcome it and kill him. I was expecting more from this guy because he was one of the few recurring Stern Reachers that have been showing up in this arc. But not only does he get killed off in the same chapter without using any of his other Quincy abilities or that bow he pulled out from his bracelet, which by the way, how he's able to fit that thing, he gets killed off without us knowing how his ability truly works. We know what the death dealing can do, but we don't know how it works. I assume it's got something to do with Askin licking and drinking his own blood, which according to the translation, it's any specified substance that's absorbed. So I'm assuming that the substance that Askin is going to create a perfect lethal dose and alter it has to enter in his body, which is probably why he was licking and drinking his own blood. But how is Askin drinking his own blood able to lower the lethal dose of Nimaiya's blood? Maybe Askin had to get hurt by Nimaiya in order to target his death dealing on him, which would make the death dealing a cross between the abilities of Hidan from Naruto and Ebony Devil from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. But I don't understand how Askin was able to survive from getting cut by Sayabuse. Did he lower the lethal dose of the sword swing or something? I would have assumed Blood Vein, but that would have applied to the rest of the Elite Guard members. Which, by the way, when was the last time a Quincy used Blood Vein? Ugh, fuck it, this is going on long enough. So, as much as I wanted to like this chapter, I couldn't because of what happened. So, to me, this chapter wasn't good. Nimaiya was figuring out what to do since he was facing off against Yhwach, since all the information they have on him was from his battle against Yamamoto 1,000 years ago, and Yamamoto's battle against the copy from the previous invasion. Since Yhwach won't be defeated so easily with one swing, he figures that he should cut off one of his arms as they were glowing, and Yhwach unleashes a bright light within the cage. Meanwhile, in the Serite, Giselle and Bambietta are hidden underneath some rubble as Giselle eats Bambietta's flesh and blood. Bambietta tells Giselle not to take too much of her blood because she doesn't want to die yet. However, Giselle's response was to grab her head and slam it onto the ground multiple times, telling her that she's already dead and to shut up and return her blood to him. her it. You know what, fuck it, I don't know anymore. But bashing her head kills Bambietta, which causes Giselle to hug her, saying I love you multiple times and that she's cute when she's dead. And yeah, Giselle's fucking creepy and a psycho. Anyway, Lototo finds them as we see Giselle's Volstandig, as she tells Giselle what happened to Pepe and Menenes, who was defeated by Lototo but isn't dead. As for Pepe, he's officially dead and he also tasted disgusting. No surprise right there. However, a gun is pointed to the side of her head as we see Inspector Quincy Gordon, which we finally learn the guy's name. It's Sternreacher N. Robert Accutrone. You know, out of all the Quincy names, that's actually one of the most normal ones. He tells Lototo that Yhwach went to the Soul King's palace, leaving behind the Sternreachers that weren't chosen to be taken with him. To which Lototo doesn't seem to be bothered by this. In fact, she doesn't think it was a big deal considering that they'll just continue fighting in this Arete and wait for Yhwach to come back. However, this causes Robert to freak out, saying that she's completely oblivious and that they're all finished. However, Lototo is a newcomer, so she has no idea of the terrors Yhwach is capable of. Since the Sternreachers were left behind in the Arete, they were deemed unnecessary for the oncoming battle, and will become fodder for Yhwach's Ashwalen. And just when we got this guy's name, a pillar of light emerges from the sky, hits Robert, and kills him. Two more appear for Giselle and Lototo, but they manage to hide underneath the rubble, getting away from the light. However, their Volstandig wings disappear. So even if they weren't hit by the light, their Quincy ability still gets stolen by the Ashwalen. More pillars of light spread throughout the Arete, as Basby and Nanana were shown getting hit by the light. Lototo yells up to the sky, asking Yhwach just what were they to him, and Yhwach, in the Soul King's palace, was able to hear this and replies, comrades. They are comrades that help each other out. He uses the Ashwalen to revive the elite guards that were killed by Nimaiya, and the chapter ends with Yhwach saying, now then, Squad Zero. Shall we? You know, I couldn't understand why Kubo called this chapter What the Hell. Now I understand why. I'm glad that Nimaiya didn't act all hot-headed and rushed at Yhwach. He was trying to come up with a way to defeat him. But considering that he resurrected the elite guards, Nimaiya is definitely going to struggle. I mean, he's definitely not going to one-shot these guys just like in the last two chapters. Also, they have their Volstandigs activated, and considering that this is Yhwach's Ashwalen, they obviously got a big power boost. I'm also kind of glad that the elite guards were revived, because we'll now get the chance to see what the miracle and what the compulsory can do, and we'll probably get more information on Askin's death-dealing ability. Now, with Giselle eating Bambietta, I'm assuming this was to heal that wound that Mayuri inflicted upon him, her, it, but I don't understand why Mayuri didn't try to kill Giselle. Maybe it's because he knew that killing Giselle is impossible and decided to not waste his time or something. As for Bambietta, I thought she was officially killed off when she was blown to pieces, but now she's dead for reals this time, and I gotta be honest here, I thought Bambietta was better before she was a zombie. Also, what was up with Giselle? I mean, she, he, it was acting like a freaking psycho. I don't know if this is how Giselle acts towards his or her zombies, but if this is how Giselle acts towards Bambietta, then why? But Giselle's Volstandig was nice. I mean, those bone wings definitely suited him, her. Then we get to the parts of the chapter that made me go, what the hell? It's about goddamn time that we learned about Quincy Gordon's name and letter, but the dude gets killed off in the same chapter and we don't even know what the letter N represents. We don't even know what his ability is. I mean, talk about a letdown. The only cool thing he's ever done was shoot Shunsui in the eye. What else he's done? He got defeated by Miyagi off panel, and he was freaking out over becoming fodder to Yhwach's Ashwalen. That's about it. But since he called Lototo a newcomer, that probably means that Giselle and Lototo recently joined the Sternreachers, and that there are probably some Quincy's in the Sternreacher army that were around longer than them. Probably explains why Lototo was surprised when Yhwach unleashed his Ashwalen, but I assume that any Quincy that knows about Yhwach would obviously know that Yhwach will pull something like this, because this is how Yhwach is. And it's not just Robert that gets killed off. Nanana and freaking Basby are gonna get killed off too. We don't know what the U stands for, and we don't know what Nanana's ability is. But the worst part is that Basby gets hit by the Ashwalen. What the actual hell? Just like Askin, he was one of the few recurring Sternreachers in this arc, and many people, including myself, really like him. Out of all the Stern Reachers, aside from the Masculine, Basby has been pulling all the stops and doing some pretty good work if you think about it. He took down Izuru, he could have killed Toshiro if he wasn't interrupted by Kangdu. I'm assuming he defeated Shinji, Omaida, and Hinamori since we never see them ever again, and he was going to take on Renji and Rukia, which was a fight that I really wanted to see. But no, he gets hit by the Ashwalan and he's going to die. So since Lil Toto and Giselle were the only ones that didn't get hit by the Ashwalan, they still lost their Quincy powers either way, so they're completely helpless. This also means that there are no more Stern Reachers left to fight. So what are the Fullbringers gonna do? What are the Shinigami that haven't appeared and fought yet are going to do? What are Grimmjow and the Rancor army going to do? Also, I can't be the only one who's noticed this, but these battles as of late have been going at a constant back and forth, which is not a problem sometimes, but this has been going on quite long enough and starting to get really annoying. But despite the flaws and the mixed feelings I'm getting, this chapter does make you look forward to see what happens next. Renji wonders what's happening right now as Basby yells up to the sky to Yhwach, asking him if this is how he does things. Meanwhile, with Giselle and Lil Toto, Giselle is clinging onto Bambietta's corpse, saying that she won't die. Lil Toto agrees that they won't die, as she and Basby yell out, "There's no way in hell we're dying in a place like this." We cut to Byakuya, who is witnessing the light and wondering what it is. Meanwhile, at the Squad 1 barracks, Shunsui tells Okikiba and Nanao that he has to leave for a while, saying that it's not just the Serite, but the royal palace that's in grave danger at the moment. Back at the palace, Nimaiya got shot twice on the shoulder as Haschwald explains about the Ashwalan. It's a redistribution of power that collects the life force and powers of the Quincy who are deemed expendable and distributes it out to those who are deemed essential. Those who have their powers taken away will die, and those who receive those powers will become even stronger and are reborn. It's not something that the Tree of Life can absorb because it's a transfer of power, not reishi. So Nimaiya assumes that Lele's bullets that could not penetrate through before can now blast holes into his body. However, Lele tells him that he's made two mistakes. The first one is that the powers do not become stronger. They're their original powers, but they weren't able to bring them up to the surface or use them, which is what the Ashwalan is for, to reawaken their true full power. And the second mistake is that the bullets that Lele shoots from his gun are not bullets. He takes aim and fires at Nimaiya one more time, but it seems to be blocked by Korinji's paddle and Hikefune's spoon. However, according to Lele, no matter how many layers of walls there are, the targets cannot be shielded. So whatever Lele shot at Nimaiya went right through the paddle and spoon and hit Nimaiya right through the chest. The name of Lele's ability is Banbutsu Kansu, which means to pierce through all things. There are no bullets in his gun, but anything and everything between the gun point and the target will be pierced through. He then asks the three to get into a perfect straight line so that he can kill them all with one shot. Meanwhile, Pernita bends the tree, destroying the cage as Yhwach approaches the Soul King's palace and Ichibei, asking him if he could let him pass. Ichibei gets up, pulling out his paintbrush, and the chapter ends with him saying, "Calling me by my name in such a familiar tone may just result in your voice going hoarse." In another translation, he says that his voice will be crushed, which is a way better one than this one. I thought this chapter was a bit better than the last one. I did like the explanation we got about the Ashwalan, and according to Haschwald, this is one of Yhwach's many powers, which makes me even more looking forward to seeing Yhwach fight against Ichibei. Not just to see what else can Yhwach do, but to see what Ichibei can do as well. And if we're lucky, we might see his Zanpakuto. We know that he's the monk that grants names on everything in Soul Society, so how is that ability going to help him against Yhwach? I don't know. But considering that he can write seals, he probably has various seals that he can use against Yhwach. The beginning part was okay, but went longer than it should have. I did feel bad for Lil Toto and Basby, but Byakuya's appearance in the chapter just reminds us that Byakuya is still around, and with Shunsui, honestly, I was expecting him to do something sooner considering, he's now the head captain, and that Okikiba guy is still around. although I thought he died in the previous invasion, but I guess I was wrong. By the way, Shinsui, he's not wearing his eye patch, and he has his eye back. Is this a mistake on Kubo's part, or was this intentional? Because if this was, I guess he got his eye healed from either Orihime, or it's a fake eye. With Lily, we now know why he's called the X-axis, but what he told to Nimaiya was a bit confusing at first. Since he said that this was an ability that he had this whole time, I was wondering why couldn't he have used this sooner, but since he said that the Ashwauland allowed him to tap into that latent power of his, I guess that makes sense. But if his bullets weren't really bullets, then how was Nimaiya able to slice them? But from what Lily said about lining up in a straight line, it seems that he can only shoot straight. So all they have to do against Lily is dodge his whatever the hell he's shooting, get behind him, and slice his freaking head off or something. Also, wasn't his gun sliced in half by Sayabuse, so the Ashwauland was able to repair his gun or something? I don't know. Although the chapter overall is better than the previous one, there are still some parts of the chapter that left me scratching my head. Also, I don't think Nimaiya is dead. Shinsui hops over the ruined Serite, wondering if the Quincy's left, the buildings will return to their original places, and the buildings that were destroyed will revert back to as they once were. He runs into someone that we haven't seen in a very, very long time, and it is Ukitake. He says that they let the invasion to the Soul King's palace happen, which was something Ukitake noticed because this is the Kamikake based on what was foreseen. What is this Kamikake Ukitake speaks of? I'm assuming it's got to do something with that giant eyeshadow with a ring around it right behind him, and it's apparently successful, which means they're going to keep on using it, whatever the hell this Kamikake is. Shinsui leaves, telling Ukitake that he's going to pay a visit to Central 46. Meanwhile, Ichibei is drawing lines with his paintbrush, creating a space where he will defeat Yhwach. However, Yhwach tells him that his calculation is a bit off because Ichibei will be killed 3 paces before that line. He says Ichibei's full name, who draws a seal telling him that his name isn't something you can toss around so casually. Suddenly a giant hand appears and slams Yhwach off the platform, and that giant hand is called the Senri Tsutensho, heaven-piercing palm of 1,000 ri. Ri being a unit of measurement equating to 3,927 meters or 4,295 yards. Anything that comes into contact within 1,000 ri range will be sent flying without prejudice. Yhwach was about to do something but couldn't because his throat was crushed. Ichibei then summons another giant hand and tells Yhwach, when you've returned from flying 1,000 ri, make sure you've repented, as the giant hand slams onto Yhwach as he is sent down flying. Yhwach pierces his throat with his own fingers, bestowing himself with the voice once more, regaining his voice and summoning a giant bow with 6 giant arrows called the Zankuto Bogen, or Great Holy Bow. He shoots the arrows, which all it did to Ichibei was a scratch on his back, but the arrows were meant to save Yhwach as he gets pierced by one of them, sending him back to the Soul King's palace. And even though his body was pierced through with an arrow, he was able to break the arrow and he's now okay. And the chapter ends with Ichibei turning towards Yhwach, revealing complete white eyes and an eerie look, saying, "You leave me little choice but to make your life forfeit." Now this was a really good chapter. So far, Ichibei has come off as really strong, but how is he able to summon those giant hands? I really have no idea. Maybe it's got something to do with those lines or that seal he drew earlier. But Yhwach also shows that he's no joke either. Getting pierced by his own arrows just to save himself from falling down back to the Serite, he's got some serious balls. And he was able to bestow the voice back to him. I'm assuming it's because he took a portion of his soul and then gave it back to himself or something. It is one of his abilities as a Soul King, but it could be something else. It might be another one of his unknown abilities that we haven't seen before. Now with Shinsui and Ukitake, where the hell was Ukitake this whole time? The dude hasn't even appeared ever since the second invasion started, which was over 60 chapters ago. You can assume it's because he was using Kamikake, but all we know about it so far is that it's a giant shadow and it has an eye and a ring. According to the translation notes, Kamikake means divine presence, although the term itself normally means swear to God. If I recall, over 60 chapters ago, his last appearance, he was in some sort of room with a giant lotus statue thing, so he must have been either praying or meditating or something, but that's all we know about Kamikake. For all we know, this might be some special enhanced Kido spell, and I highly doubt that this is Ukitake's Bankai. Is this Shunsui's Bankai? I don't know. I just hope we learn what the hell Kamikake is, and what it can do, and what was Ukitake doing this whole time. Now, Shunsui, he's visiting Central 46. For what purpose? Well, there's been some theories that it must have something to do with Aizen. If that is true, that means that Shunsui and the rest of the Shinigami will have no choice but to ally themselves with their former enemy, Aizen. Now, considering that Aizen was locked up, it was obvious that we were going to see him again. It was just a matter of when. So, are we going to see Aizen reappear very soon? It's possible. That is, if it's the reason why Shunsui is visiting Central 46. Now, there's a part of me that's looking forward to seeing Aizen again, but there's also a part of me that's not because, well, you all know what happened during the fake Karakura Town arc after all. So overall, I liked this chapter. I thought it was good, but once again, this chapter raises some questions. So that is my review and thoughts on chapters 597 to 605. Tell me guys, what are your thoughts on those chapters? Let me know in the comments below. Like the video if you like it and subscribe to more videos, and be sure to check out my Facebook fan page and Google+. So yeah, that is Bleach chapter 597 to 605. I'm gonna respond to 27 and I'll see you guys later. Bye.